All right, we are going to go ahead and start this TLC session. Hello and welcome. My name is Paul Schultz, and I will be the host for this TLC session entitled Stay Engaged. It's essential chunks of leadership, wisdom, and knowledge to improve your leadership engagement. Speaking today will be Bill Davis, Marty McAuliffe, and Charlie Minnick. We look forward to your presentation on this really exciting topic. Our panel of presenters will be taking questions at the end of their presentation. And again, we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And with that, I introduce our distinguished panel of speakers.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Well, it's my pleasure to kick off our session. And the best part about putting this session together was the chance to work with Bill and Marty, who are just exceptional people and leaders. So for me, that was the funnest part of this, was a chance to collaborate and work together and come up with what you'll see today. So, all right, so we'll go on to the next slide. So there we three are. So I think just a bit about us, I think. So knowing my two colleagues as I do, we three are really lifelong learners. I read somewhere a long time ago that lifelong learning is really kind of the ongoing, voluntary, self-motivated pursuit of knowledge. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. I've been in school a long time, but the coolest part is every day I do something, every class I teach, I always learn something from somebody. So that's the coolest part about always be learning. So our learning never stops. It's fun, and it really just keeps us, and I know it keeps me going too. So when I think back to why we really wrote the book, that's why. It's ongoing learning. It's fun to share what we've learned over the years, and I think it really keeps us going, keeps us energized, and I think it's part of our responsibility to pass along these little chunks of wisdom that we've acquired over the years. I think some of these little nuggets or chunks we've gotten from the School of Hard Knocks. I think some people go, well, you know a lot. Well, sometimes I think I've just screwed up enough and I've tried to learn from it as we go along. So I think that's the lifelong learning part. So it's good to kind of pass along what we've learned over the years to the next generation. So, and I think it's much like others did for us. I'm a firm believer in we all get where we are because somebody somewhere along the line believed in us, gave us a chance. So we want to make sure we share what we've learned with my two great colleagues here. So, all right, next slide there, please. So I've been at this higher ed game a long time, probably a little over 25 years. Years and years ago, I did some consulting work with a guy on enrollment management, and we came across this little saying, I think, and hangs on my wall. It's hung on my wall for 25 years, and I think anybody who teaches and interacts with students, this is really what it's all about. So it's called The Student Is. So the student is the most important person on the campus. With them, there would be no need for the institution. They're not a cold enrollment statistic, but a flesh and blood human being with feelings and emotions like our own. We all have good days, bad days, up days, down days, and so do our students. So they're not just a statistic or a number on a sheet. They're human beings who have the same kind of emotions that we do on a daily basis. Not someone to be tolerated so we can do our thing. They are our thing. Not dependent on us, rather we are dependent upon them. And I think the last one is the most important one to me. Not an interruption of our work, they're the purpose of it. So that's why we do what we do on a daily basis. And everything we do, hope we have in mind, how does it impact the student as we go along. So that's a little bit about, but that's hung on my wall for a long, long time, and I really like it a lot. So a bit about our book. Special thanks, as people talk down the road, Dr. Ron Beach, who really helped us take this book from concept to publication. And I can also see there's lots of people involved, and we got lots of help and support. It takes a village to publish a book, so I think we had lots of help from lots of very good, very, very talented people. And I personally want to thank Bill Davis, who he really led the charge in this project, and he invited Marty and myself to be part of it. So Bill and I, we go way back, a long time, don't we, Bill?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We know each other for years and years. So it's just really cool to continue those partnerships and relationships. So again, so just thank Bill for that. And at the end of our presentation with our book, Marty will let you know how you get a free, yes, I did say free copy of our book. So hang on to the end. The best part's coming for that. So, okay. So let's talk a bit about the kind of the crux of our book. I think one point is on to talk about what is chunking.
Charlie, you're on mute.
I clicked the wrong button, sorry. Piece of information into larger, more meaningful units. Chunks allows for more efficient encoding and stored information. It lessens the burden on memory, on working memory. So I think it really is, we'll discuss in a few minutes, the various chapters of this book are really about different leadership strategies or nuggets information and then tying them all together to produce an engaging, thought-provoking addition to your leadership library. So each one of these chapters is a little piece, a little nugget of information that you can take and see how it all fits together to form effective leadership leadership theory and thought. So, and I think if you talk about, it's not definitions of leadership. And I think that one of the best books I had was Modeling the Way. So I think two thoughts about leadership, and then I'll turn it over to Marty, is that one I like the most is that leadership is an effective interaction between leaders, followers, and the situation, and that leadership is a skill set and a process, not a position. So again, Leadership Challenge is a fantastic book. You can do lots of cool things with it. There's leadership practice of inventory that goes with it. So, but I think leadership it's critical for organizational success. So what I'll do at this point is then turn it over to Marty, who can take us through the first few kind of nuggets or chunks that we came up with in our book.
Great, thanks, Charlie. And just to reinforce, it's so much fun to work with people you enjoy being with and engaging with. And this book was really just a lot of fun. Rather than it being an extra chore or a task, it was fun to get together and collaborate on this project. But there's a lot of wisdom in The Wizard of Oz, and it says that you should begin at the beginning. So they started at the very first step of the Yellow Brick Road. So the very first quote in this book comes from Martin Luther King, and it says, "The ultimate measure of a person is not where he or she stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where she or he stands at times of challenge and controversy." If we only ever had any challenges here at Ashford or any controversies, this might be more appropriate. Kind of joking aside here, we're obviously going through a big change as an institution, and we have to look to leadership and our roles as leaders, as well as what's going on here and how we all make this a better place and continue to strive and to ultimately serve our students, which is our goal. There was just a little bit about me for folks who don't know me in the College of Liberal Arts. When we would be introducing ourselves to new people, basically the people in the College of Liberal Arts would say, in the beginning there was Marty. I actually worked for Bridgepoint Education before Ashford was founded, and I helped create the criminal justice program in 2005 and helped launch that, and I've been here ever since. So I've really been here and seen a lot of change. So as we get into the chapters, the title of chapter 1 is Effective Leaders Influence Behaviors in Positive Ways. And what I plan on doing is kind of taking one piece from each chapter and elaborating on that. Basically, the focus of this chapter I want to touch on is management expert Warren Bennis noted that none of us is as smart as all of us. And this is really a tool that we can use in the classrooms too. When students are not participating in discussions, when they choose to, not really be active in the class, that's the first thing I say is we all learn better collectively than individually, and we need to focus on that. It's the same thing on our side as part of management here, as working together to make sure we're ensuring, good results for our students and positive outcomes for them as well. So the need to work together, and the three of us, I think, are a good example of that. We're from different schools and different levels of employment here at the school. At Ashford, but we collaborate and we've worked together to come up with this book and now this presentation. So the second chapter talks about understanding the leadership context. And in this chapter, there's a brief description of how notions of leadership have changed over the centuries. Basically, you know, in the old, you know, centuries ago, we had kings and priests and other leaders that were deemed either by training or birthright as being the leaders to follow us. And obviously those things have changed greatly into the 21st century. And the quote here that I want to focus on is, what makes a great leader can be seen from two distinctive perspectives, from people on the outside looking in and from people on the inside looking out. And this really comes down to, are we walking the talk? You know, anybody can talk a good game of leadership, but when it comes down to actually effective leadership, are we being engaged? Are we making sure that people are informed? And are we leading in ways that are positive for all concerned? And that's really what we need to do. And so our look going, you know, if we think about the last 30 years and how leadership has changed, you know, technology alone, how many of us don't work in one place? How many of us work from our homes? Yet we still need to be collaborative and together on what we're doing. So how will the future view leadership from both without and within is something that we need to examine as an institution, particularly amidst all the change we're going through now. The third chapter is a great one because it says how to take the initiative and become a self-starter. And the quote from there is, agile organizations are more adaptive, innovative, and resilient, and they understand that continuous change is part of their internal and external environments. You know, we have a great fear of change. It's one of the things that you know, psychological studies will say people fear the most, but we also know that change is constant. So what's the fear about? We know things are going to change. We have to be ready for that. And the question I love in this chapter, it asks the question, if organizations are successful at adapting, taking initiative, and being assertive, can we as employees do the same? And the answer is yes, you can, is what's in the book. So as we, you know, we all need to be motivated in this change process that we're a part of moving forward. What's the best practices? What's the better way to find effective means for our students, not only for retention, but also just for what their learning experience is, because the better they get of a learning experience from us, the more word of mouth we're going to have. And that's actually a guarantee for our employment to continue to excite students to be a part of what we do. The fourth chapter is essential skills to become an effective leader. And the takeaway from that chapter is leaders who connect with their teams and organizations are consistent, competent, and impactful people who are also strong communicators. They demonstrate clear understandings of organizational strategies, goals, and systems while they engage their teams and people. And as we move forward as an organization, that has to be a two-way street. If we're leaders, you know, if we're not necessarily a formal position of leadership, as far as the organizational structure goes, we do need to ask questions you know, that can sometimes be challenging and sometimes be supportive, but, you know, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward, because collaboratively, like we've said, we'll all do better. So the other thought too for, you know, faculty that are on this call is we are leaders. We're leaders of our students, even if we don't have a formal management position per the organizational chart. And, you know, we need to be that line of contact for our students to make sure that we are effectively leading them and keeping two-way communication with them and making sure they understand what's going on. So the fifth chapter has the fundamental qualities of successful leaders. And this chapter begins with the truth that we've all experienced good, poor, and sometimes exceptional leaders in our lifetime. And we really need to model leadership that is the most effective that we've experienced. Think about whether it was a teacher in high school or before, or whether it was a manager in any position you've had before. What were the things that made her so effective? What about him did you like that was really, you know, touched you to do more than just what the 9-to-5 job description was to better the organization and even yourself as you move forward in whatever you're doing? So, and the 4 key points for that are optimism, passion, vision, and being considerate of others. If we could have 4 watch terms for the way we progress as an organization through here, both through leadership and us in the leadership capacities we have as individuals, let's keep optimism, passion, vision, and being considerate of others the 4 guideposts by which we interact with each other. We do that and we'll all be in a great position moving forward. So with that being done, I'll turn it over to Bill Davis for the second half of the book.
Thank you very much, Marty. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I think Bob, you got me off mute. What I would like to say is, you know, I've always been a big fan of leadership. I'm very passionate of leadership management. My background, my undergrad degree is a BA in business administration. My master's is in organizational leadership. I've been a big fan of Dale Carnegie. I've taken all those courses. leadership course, professional selling, human relations, St. Ambrose leadership through people skills, etc. University of Chicago programs. Now, and then I actually learned on the job, through the job, and off the job, experiential learning. So starting at the bottom and working my way up the ladder, being in higher education here is a huge bonus for me, because I was able to take a lot of that practitioner experience and connect these concepts and theories to them. So what I'd like to do is just reinforce those things Marty said, which are spot on. Some sayings I had, make sure you talk the walk and walk the talk. And remember, they're watching more how you walk it than you talk it. And when you first meet people, the way you establish credibility is through your words. Secondly is action. So modeling consistency is very important. And what I would like to just tap on here is just touch base on some of the things in these chapters. For example, in chapter 6, key competencies that lead to leadership success. No matter your field or career level, leadership is a central factor of your work environment. You probably experienced examples of strong leaders and other examples where leaders may have left you more to be desired, but there's always something to learn from those leaders, because they can teach you maybe what not to do as you shape and develop your own style. But, leadership involves motivating employees. And one of the researchers and authors that I embraced early on in the book, The Art and Science of Leadership by Dr. Nahavandi, and this was part of our master's program, she defined leadership like this: it's any person who influences individuals and groups within an organization, helps them in the establishment of goals, and guides them toward the achievement of those goals, thereby making them effective. And she recognizes the importance of influence attempts, as leaders influence, and the types of tactics that they use, from personal appeals to inspirational appeals, consultation, exchange tactics, pressure, perhaps coalition tactics. But, when you ingratiate and you work with people and you're leading and you see your goals, good things just happen. And, telling you that I was a fan of management and leadership, the basic 5 functions of leadership from Dr. Minnick's book and Dr. Riley is simply planning, organizing, leading, staffing, and controlling. And it's a great book, and it starts our Management 330 program. And when, leadership is a component of those 5 functions. So to me, understanding that, understanding the role you play as a leader is just so important. But motivating people in this article, when you look at this, I share this with students quite a bit. In my education, I learned all about Kenneth Thomas, his book on intrinsic motivation. When you give people a sense of choice with the task, and then a sense of competence, and then when it comes down to the purpose, a sense of meaning and a sense of progress, and you reinforce that, and then they start a motivational cycle in themselves. And so how we collaborate and work with people to complete a task is really something significant in the workplace. So effective leaders engage their employees, bring them together, they remove those barriers, they work with people. So, and that's what this is all about. And motivation and collaboration are important leadership competencies. Increasing your focus and honing your skills in these areas is only going to improve. So this is a great chapter 6, to tune you up. And that's my advice to you is, as you go through this book and you'll see how to get a copy, is just kind of hone in on those areas that might relate to you and that you feel really good with, and take your game up in the strength areas and see maybe what you need to do to tune up in a few other areas. But if you want to be a better leader, stretch to this stretch to this level. Good leaders can adapt to various situations. Adaptability, Marty was talking about change. We need to adapt well. We need to get through that particular situation, and then we just need to continue to work and work through change, because change is constant, it's continuous. But good leaders, transform situations into opportunities to engage with employees at their respective level of readiness. Now, when we talk about readiness, one of the theories, concepts that I really love is situational leadership. And to me, I've worked with a lot of smart people. When I transitioned my PepsiCo career into academia, I realized who was mature, knew what they were, the task, were very well prepared. So I really didn't need to do a lot there other than just reinforce. So I used a different type of style which was situational leadership. Depending upon their level of maturity and readiness is where I put my time and attention in to help the team. And once I applied that situational leadership, things just worked really well. And I want to quote Dr. Riley and Minnick and Bach, their book, because they said that employees with a high level of readiness require a different leadership style than an employee with a low level of readiness. You know, one size doesn't fit all. So before assigning a task to an employee, situational leaders should consider an employee's readiness, you know, consider their knowledge, their skill level, their maturity, the level of buy-in they give you, their willingness, because you may have to address some of those to determine what type of style, how you want to manage someone. But situational leadership is an excellent theory, and the model is based on the premise that leaders will match their directive and supportive styles, how they give instruction and meet needs and meet individual subordinates, team players, so et cetera, meet their development relative level to a specific task. But leadership matters, and no matter what the situation, you know, Marty mentioned understanding the culture and context. That's what good leaders do. They know the situation, they know the culture, they understand the dynamic in which they're operating in. But teams depend on strong leadership for success. Chapter 8, just to top line this, how about change? Do you lead or follow in times of change? You know, again, this whole concept of adapting to change or face the possibility of falling behind in the marketplace. And a good leader, because organizations go through that, and a good leader must stand at the helm, navigate the currents of change. Leaders in organization, you know, the change can be complex. There's competition out there, and leading change is one of the most important and difficult leadership responsibilities because of all those forces around us, internal and external. But, you know, modeling is so important. Be the change leader you want to see. Effective leaders use transformational leadership styles, you know, and what transformational leaders do, because there's transactional or transformational. Transformational leaders inspire, they have a shared vision, they provide encouragement, they enable others to act, they're flexible, adaptable, empathetic, they use their EQ. All that goes into the dynamic. The other thing you'll like in this particular chapter is we talk about the 4 phenomena of change, you know, what goes on, and that's from the Collarette, Schneider, and Legris article. You'll like that. It talks about rupture, fragmentation, concurrence, and recurrence. And until you're through the change continuum, because that continuum could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 6 months, could be short or long. But you want to be aware of what goes on in that continuum, because there will be some fragment ruptures, there'll be some fragmentations. You'll have to concurrently put it back in place and make it efficient, et cetera. But then it recurs because change is out there in the marketplace again, and we got to continue to adjust and adapt. So like Marty said, things are always changing. Successful change takes time, and leading change is not easy. So it requires a skill and a practical and theoretical understanding of professional change models. So what I'd like to just say about this article simply is that what a great article to have some discussion in your classroom about. There's enough nuggets in here, or we call them chunks, to have some great dialogue that's empathetic, meaningful. You can really have some exchange with your students. Be a transformational sales leader. You know, I come from a sales marketing background, so I penned this particular chapter and contributed this. But, you know, as we said, you know, today's business environment requires sales leaders to not shy away from change, but rather to embrace it and become champions of change, because change is all around us. And, you know, the thing that I always tried to do when I was leading my teams in Chicago, et cetera, was to set a good example and motivate them by being a transformational style leader. You know, there was some transactional leadership in there where, you know, they do the job, we give them rewards, and we give them the things that are due to them, et cetera. But if I wanted to get them at the next level, I had to, you know, inspire them and do other things and keep them informed and so forth. And, you know, John Maxwell, leadership expert, best-selling author, says leadership is nothing but influence. He tells us that great leaders inspire their followers to have confidence in themselves. Riley, Minnick, and Bach, in their book, The 5 Functions, tell us that in a business context, leadership consists of all those activities undertaken to help people. People are our most important asset in an organization, achieve the highest level of performance. So conceptualize and apply transformational leadership. It's a style that will complement transactional leadership. but it's all here for you in this particular article. And then the last one that I'm going to cover before I turn it over to Dr. Minnick to close here, because he's got one chapter, is to just talk about being resilient. You know, I learned this teaching at Ashford in the early classes. I really loved this particular subject about resiliency. L. Siebert, he says that when you are faced with adversity, remember that your mind and habits will create barriers or bridges to your future. You know, being mindful of your thoughts and seeing where you want to go and staying focused and serving well and aligning to leadership, structure, systems, culture, strategies, and giving your best toward that as a member of the organization. It can be very gratifying. And you have to think like that, because if you fill your mind with too many other thoughts, you know, you may not optimize, you may not fully contribute and solve some of the things that maybe you can help for the organization. People can grow from adversity, and when you recover from setbacks, you develop strengths that you might not have known have existed. But, you know, here's a couple tips. Focus outward, you know, maintain your health, well-being, and emotional stability. Focus inward. You develop your self-esteem, self-confidence, positive self-concept. Keep a positive attitude and outlook. I think, you know, Lauren Palmer Noon, Dr. Noon always says, you know, success is attitude, attitude, attitude. I really believe a lot of it is how you focus and put your actions toward it. But the one thing, and I'm just going to say this for myself, serendipity does happen. I just put forth hard work, and I try to do my very best to serve and make people better, and serendipitous moments occurred, and here I am teaching 200 plus courses later in the Forbes School of Business. I mean, who would have thought? If somebody would have said back in '95, Bill, you're going to be in an education university doing this, I would have said, how do you see that? But good things do happen, and thank you for mentors like Dr. Minnick and Dr. McAuliffe and everybody. That has helped me a lot. So Marty, Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So the last chapter I'm going to talk about is talks about tips for relevance, trust in teams. So, you know, working teams is not really a new concept. What's gaining momentum and acceptance is the idea of virtual teams. So I think one of the value of virtual teams is it really allows people to bring together the best and the brightest talent that they have, even if those folks are all geographically dispersed. You know, it used to be when you had meetings, you all had to sit in one room, or you know, now technology, you can actually see each other, much like this conference, this session that we're doing. You know, one time we used to have the little space phone thing where you could hear people, but now it's really come a long way. So, but I think as you look at virtual teams, they do have to have some special sort of consideration in order to be effective. Of course, you have to use proper technology. Without that, you're not going to get off the ground. You know, you have to have trust. And one thing about trust, one of the best books I ever read about teams is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's called by Patrick Lencioni. So it's a great book. You can read it. It's about a 2-hour read if you want to. But the number one dysfunction of teams is trust. If you don't fundamentally trust each other, and if you're always worrying about whose fingerprints on a knife in your back, you're gonna have a hard time moving forward. So that's a great book too if you ever want to read something about teams and trust. So you have to establish purpose. You have to embrace the diversity everybody brings to the process, again, which is good for, you know, all teams, but virtual teams do have their challenges that way. But done correctly, I think virtual teams can be a significant competitive advantage for an organization. So it just allows us to tap into people where they are, not necessarily all have to be sitting in the same room. So that's just a little bit about virtual teams. So now I'll throw it back to Marty to kind of wrap things up.
Okay, so thanks everybody for coming to this session. And you know, basically the takeaway should be, you know, basically the golden rule. Let's treat each other as you want to be treated, both in leadership positions and in subordinate positions. And if you want a free copy of the book, there's a link. Is that the next slide, Bill? Oh, I guess we're sending it to us. Okay, so people can come to us. Sorry, I didn't read that right at the start. So if you want to contact us through email, we can send you a link for the book, and we're available for questions now if there are any in the time we have allotted. I did answer Kate's questions that she had written in the chat. Basically modeling, you know, how do you lead in the classroom as an instructor? And essentially modeling the concepts that we talked about here and being the example for the students is really what we need to do. The type of respect and the type of output we expect from them, we need to give to them and even more in return.
Yeah, I think the interesting question too, how do you try to lead if maybe you're not in a formal position? I think there's lots of ways to do that. I mean, I think you can lead by maybe someone's having a bad day, just checking into them. How you doing? You look seem a little upset. Years ago, I used to teach a freshman leadership class, and I've never been a leader. So I had a $100 bill, and I told them, I go, if you can convince me you've never been a leader in your life, I'll give you this $100 bill. Nobody ever got my $100 bill. So, but it's just ways to thinking about different. I think you can lead from behind. You don't necessarily have to be the front person. So I think there's lots of ways people can lead just to try to make a positive difference in someone's life. Even if it's a small little piece, you're still positively impacting that person. So there's lots of ways, I think. And I think it could be part of your performance review, with your supervisor. I want to be involved. How can I take a leadership role? I want to take on a project, volunteer to be on teams, groups, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's lots of ways to move forward. You just need to make sure that your wishes are known to people who can help you get where you need to be.
Yeah, and Charlie, just two things I'm going to quickly add is an old saying that I learned and practiced in my progressive Pepsi career is that we used to say the men and women reflect the tempo of the boss. If the boss is moving and caring and showing and connected and engaged, usually the people will follow. But you got to care. And the second thing I just want to point out is something that a student gave to me on campus one time, a little plaque. I still have it up here. I talked a little bit about people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. I mean, we all bring expertise and knowledge to a classroom, but do people see that you care? Andrew Clark told me a long time ago, he said, think about these three values: quality, innovation, and caring. Embrace them. And I did throughout my entire teaching career. And as I was talking to the class this one night, I said, leaders people don't care how much you care people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And the student gave me the plaque and she said, the students don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So my best advice is consistency, model consistency, be positive, lead and lift, nurture people in their transformations, but care. Caring is so important, and people need to sense that you're on their side and they need to feel that. And you do that through consistency.
We have come to our end, and really appreciate the presentation today. Bill, Marty, Charlie, excited. Thank you also for the opportunity to get a free copy of your book. This will end this presentation, but there are more presenters coming to TLC. And so please look at the schedule and join us in those presentations as well. But again, thank you. And this will end this presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.